There's a town on Canada's northern shore with a very unique set of problems. Every autumn, the local population of Churchill, Manitoba more than doubles, but this influx of new residents aren't human. Polar bears descend on the area by the hundreds. They're waiting for the sea ice to freeze so they can spend the winter hunting seal. Now, sharing your streets with the world's largest land carnivore makes life here a little complicated, but it also makes it possible. Every year, thousands of tourists visit this town, most of them with polar bears on their bucket list. Tourism is the backbone that supports Churchill's economy. But that may be starting to present a problem.
Finally tonight, a creature battling for survival, the polar bear.
Polar bear. Polar bear.
The polar bear.
Polar bear.
Arctic polar bears are facing near extinction by the end of the century if the sea ice they depend on continues to disappear.
Over climate change and polar bears.
Climate change.
Climate change.
Climate change.
Climate change catastrophe.
Most polar bears will be killed off by the end of the century if nothing is done to halt climate change. That's according to a new report in the scientific journal.
So we're on the train to Churchill right now. It's a 16-hour ride, but if you want to go, you don't have a ton of options. There's no road. Churchill's defiant remoteness is weird enough, but what's even weirder is this train. And by that, I mean the existence of this train. This 400 kilometers of track was extremely difficult to build. It crosses tangles of boreal forest, soggy muskeg, and frost-heaving tundra, costing over $650 million to construct. The rough environment means very high maintenance costs, and the federal government has to provide shipping subsidies just to keep this line competitive. Altogether, well over $1 billion has been spent on this line. All to service a town of 900. The original reason was, of course, an overly optimistic business plan. The mouth of the Churchill River forms a natural harbor, and Canada's only Arctic deepwater port was constructed there. By 1931, the port and rail line were both completed, with the intent of shipping wheat out from the prairies. People were hopeful, but this is still the Canadian Arctic. The port is ice-free for only 3 or 4 months of the year, and has rarely turned a profit over its history, relying largely on government support just to stay functional. The line still services the occasional summer cargo ship, but largely it's just tourists. Only 15 more hours.
My name is Coral Carpenter Romanchuk, and I've lived and worked in Churchill seasonally for 22 years. I'm a tour guide. I do bear guiding, I do general sightseeing tours, sometimes driving bus, and sometimes I'm working with the polar bears out in the wildlife management area. Churchill's a very special place. It has a way of captivating a lot of people. The closeness to nature. There's something a little bit primal about Churchill, and a lot of people are really attracted to that, myself included. We always have to be conscious of where the bears are. We are literally in their habitat. Every fall, we are literally in their migration routes. So yeah, it's pretty spectacular, but there's always an element of danger here as well, most definitely. There are people who are in town today that have been injured by bears, and They've gone to great lengths just to really increase the protection of the polar bears, and also, of course, to really protect us as humans as well. Even right down to having an alert number for the locals to report bears, marauding close to the town. And for the most part, we seem to have a fairly good symbiotic relationship as humans and polar bears.
Today's the day. We are heading out to the tundra buggies, which is the most popular way to see the bears. The buggies have access to a wildlife management area that other vehicles can't get to, so they're your best shot at having a sighting. It's also very expensive. So we will be going exactly once. So fingers crossed for lots of bears. Let's go. So obviously that was one of the coolest days of my life. But I have to say there was also this feeling of sadness in seeing the bears. Like this feeling of see them before it's too late. And unfortunately that feeling isn't just a feeling. The data backs it up. Polar bears rely on sea ice for survival. They spend their winters out on the ocean hunting seals and building their fat stores. Summers they spend fasting on shore, just waiting for that ice to freeze again. Climate change has meant that ice is freezing later and melting earlier, reducing the amount of time that the bears have to hunt. Some bears are starving, while many females are struggling to have a successful pregnancy. The group of bears that live here are called the Western Hudson Bay population, and their numbers have declined over 30% since 1987.
Tourism is such a huge basis of the economy that the large reason why why Churchill exists in the capacity it does today is because of tourism, and obviously the focal point of that are the polar bears.
Strictly economically speaking, there is a silver lining for Churchill, and it also has everything to do with climate change. Since the age of exploration, people have been searching for the Northwest Passage, a shipping route through the Canadian archipelago that would shed 7,000 kilometers off the trip from Europe to Asia. Any company that could make this a viable route stands to add millions to their bottom line. And for the first time, it's becoming viable. The chief problem, aside from all the ice, is the lack of infrastructure. The Canadian Arctic is a barren and barely inhabited place. I'm sure you can see where this is going. With its ready-to-go deepwater port and rail connection, Churchill represents a huge amount of opportunity if the Northwest Passage becomes feasible. This sleepy polar bear hamlet could become the booming shipping hub of the North. As climate change continues to shape the North, Churchill stands to have a lot to gain, but also a lot to lose. They've carved out a unique livelihood adapting to life alongside polar bears. The real challenge, though, might be adapting to life without them.